Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megzy, and today I'm going to be discussing new and upcoming releases in the year 2025 that I would like to read. Most of these are fiction, but there's about 3 nonfiction I have mixed in here, and I have about 8 different titles. I normally am not someone that deliberately goes looking for new releases unless it is something I know a favorite author of mine is coming out with. But I've come across these from being on booktube and hearing about different booktubers discuss some of these titles, and also just digging around and looking on Goodreads myself. So if you're interested in hearing about any new releases that you might want to check out, stick around and we will get started. The first book that I have wanted to read since I've heard about it, and it was just listed for the Women's Prize in Fiction, shortlisted, is Good Girl by Aria Aber. I think that's how you say her last name. This is about a German-Afghan woman. Her parents are refugees that fled Afghanistan during the Russian invasion in the 80s, and she's grown up, the main character, in Berlin. And this is fiction, by the way, although I suspect there is a lot of autobiographical elements from the author. And it's about a young girl, Neela, who is trying to find herself and I guess her identity in a very xenophobic, racist Germany. I think it takes place in the present. And she apparently gets involved with this like older white American poet guy who's like a washed up artist. I'm not sure if I'm gonna really like this book because one review I looked at said that it has a lot of the hallmarks of the standard millennial novel, certain kinds of tropes that aren't necessarily bad, but I'm kind of getting sick of reading. So we'll see how it goes. I either could really like this or I could just find it disappointing and mediocre, but I do want to read it, particularly because now it was shortlisted, so we'll see. The next book I've wanted to read since I heard about it is called Pink-Pilled Women in the Far Right by Lois Shearing. This is nonfiction. It is released by an indie press, Manchester University Press, academic press, and it explores how women are being recruited into the alt-right. I think when we talk about recruitment and radicalization online, we tend to only look at men and like incels in the manosphere, but there's like a separate, very gendered universe and pathways that target women. And so the author really delves into like current politics at this time. I think particularly in America. I know that she goes over certain things like Girl Defined and kind of, I think, like level up influencers and like the crunchy granola mommy bloggers to like that sort of like weird conspiracy alt-right pipeline. Those are just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. And then I know she also talks to about the 2016 election and sort of like the history of women like willingly being participants in fascist movements and being fascists and imperialists themselves. I know there's some harsh words for Hillary Clinton in here too, so I think this is really juicy and I really want to read this. But I am definitely going to have to order it directly from the publisher or just like request it at Barnes & Noble because this is not something my library has or that is actually in stock at Barnes & Noble. But I think it's really, really relevant to the time period with rising fascism everywhere. The next book I want to read is kind of similar, and it is called Enemy Feminisms, TERFs, Policewomen, and Girlbosses Against Liberation by Sophie Lewis. I've heard of Sophie Lewis before, and I haven't read any of her stuff, but she basically, I think it's a critique of modern feminism and how some strains of feminist thought can be really harmful to other women. So she takes to task feminists that have been transphobic, feminists that are warmongers, feminists that are for like the carceral state and all that kind of stuff, girl boss, capitalist, feminism. I'm really, really interested in seeing how she tackles this. I know people will say, oh my God, it's divisive, but I'm loving these critiques of like modern feminism because I think it can help you radicalize your politics and really get a better understanding of the world. I think this was also Haymarket Books, so I think an indie press, that I might have to order this one directly. And then the last nonfiction I want to read that is super relevant to the time is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Akkad. I have talked about this in my, I don't know if it was my I think it was my upcoming like TBR for 2025 that I made. This is by I think he's an Egyptian American journalist, and it is all about Gaza and the genocide. And he also discusses the 2024 election and all of the really heartbreaking and like mixed emotions that people, particularly Arab Americans, felt during the 2024 election, and how the Democratic Party just like completely shut people out. Any like concerns people had over this topic were just completely kicked aside. And so I really struggled with this a lot myself, and I think this book is going to be, I have high hopes for this book. And I think I really think he's gonna, I really want it. Like, I feel like, honestly, I have so many thoughts myself about the 2024 election as an Arab American, as someone who is a Democrat, because I live in a very liberal area, and I felt like I really had to censor myself. So yeah, I cannot wait to read about this book. The next book I would like to read, this was released in March, is Universality by Natasha Brown. I have not read Natasha Brown. I think she is a British Black woman. She writes very, very short books. I know she also wrote Assembly, which was also like under 200 pages, and I also would like to check that out. This is apparently takes place on a Yorkshire farm, and there's an illegal rave going on, and a young man is bludgeoned to death with a solid gold bar. And so I guess a journalist comes in to investigate, and then she starts looking into like all of the people that are living on this weird farm in the middle of nowhere. I think it sounds pretty juicy. It only got 3.45 stars, but Goodreads isn't always right. I haven't read anything by this author, and I do want to check her out, so I am excited to read her stuff and see what I think. The next book that was just released last month in March is The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami. This is a dystopian sci-fi kind of novel that it sounds very Black Mirror-esque, and it's about a woman that takes place in the future where the government has the ability they have access to your dreams when you're sleeping, and so they monitor your dreams, and if your dreams are what they deem unsuitable or disturbing, they can take you into custody. And that is apparently what happens to the protagonist of this novel. She's taken to a retention center because they said that in her dreams she is at risk of harming her husband. So I haven't read anything by Laila Lalami. She is Moroccan American, and I know she wrote the Moor's account or the Moor's story and the Other Americans. Her stuff is someone because I have an interest in Arab American writers. Her stuff has been something that I've had on my radar for a bit. So I am super interested to read this because I also am a big fan of Black Mirror. I'm watching the current season. And yeah, that's like, probably I'll say when I read science fiction or like science fiction, speculative fiction adjacent, that's what I'm into, is like weird dystopian type of stuff. The next book that is going to be released in August, it has not been released yet, is called Dull Parts by Penny Zang. Now, I don't know if this is a debut author, but the title right away caught my eye because I don't know if this is a tribute to the Hole song Dull Parts. I was a huge Hole fan when I was younger in high school. But apparently it's one of those like dark academia novels, and what does it say? Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. This is definitely a tribute to Hole because it says right here, for best friends, Nikki and Sadie, college was supposed to be a fresh start, a way to blast Courtney love from car speakers and leave their youth behind. So I'm not sure if this takes place in the 90s or 2000s. There's a group of women on campus called the Sylvia Plath Club where I think like all of these girls kill themselves, and then they want to find out like what happened, the main character and her friend, and so they start digging into it. I mean, this sounds like something I would have loved in my 20s because I was like that cliche, like, I love Sylvia Plath and I listened to Hole. So I'm super curious to see how this novel is. It's released in August. I think it sounds interesting, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then the last book that has been on my radar that is going to be released at the end of September is We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad. So I kind of have, Mona Awad for me as an author is hit or miss. I either really like her stuff or I really dislike her stuff. And I've read almost all of her novels. I read 3 of her 4. I really enjoyed Bunny and All's Well. And then I thought Rouge was terrible. I thought the writing was atrocious. And that was her latest release. So I'm kind of nervous for this novel because sometimes I feel writers, when they get popular, there is a sort of pressure to keep churning stuff out, and then their stuff, you know, like strike while the iron's hot, but then the quality of their stuff can suffer, and I don't know if that was the case with Rouge. And considering that this is a follow-up to her most famous work, Bunny, I'm kind of nervous how she will handle this. It is almost 500 pages, and I'm trying to remember, I read Bunny last year, and it did kind of end on an open-ended note, but I'm curious to see where she takes this. Apparently, the main character, Samantha, it begins where she has published a novel, and then the girls that were the bunnies, who she had this whole big falling out with, they end up like tracking her down while she's on like a book tour. I don't know if this is still going to hold up and have the same magic that Bunny did, but we will see. I do want to check it out, so it could be really good or really bad. That's how Mona Awad is for me and her works. And yeah, that's it. Those are 8 books that I want to read that have just been released or are going to be released later this year. Let me know in the comments below if you have any upcoming releases that you are interested in, or if any of these books sound good to you, or any books that you think, knowing my own taste, that I might want to check out. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.